the great myth that's being perpetrated is that these are just judges. They call the laws, they see them. It has nothing to do with Republicans or Democrats. That's, if you'll pardon the expression, bullshit. We know exactly. I mean, every now and then they will stray. Every now and then there's a nominee, William Brennan, a David Souter, who doesn't follow the expected line, but that's really rare. These judges, you can rest assured that Amy Barrett's going to vote with Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, a real right-winger, and Gorsuch and Kavanaugh 90% of the time. And it's going to be good for the Republican Party, good for corporate interests, bad for blacks and young people who want to vote. That's just a simple fact.
Yeah, the kind of headline issues are, abortion rights and, Obergefell and that kind of stuff. What these people are really interested in is corporate power and giving as much power as they probably can. It was an interesting thing that Mike Lee said. And Mike Lee is a very well-educated man. And you saw him at that super spreader event. I mean, that was ridiculous. But he said, look, democracy is not really what's important here. It's liberty. And what they mean by liberty is low taxes and low regulation. And it was a stunning observation and admission, like, of course we're not into people voting that much. What we're into is allowing people to make as much money as they possibly can with lowest taxes that we can possibly give them, with the least amount of regulation that we can possibly have. That's what's behind this. And that's not what, raise money on that. If they give these conservatives, they give them all the social, hateful shit, like the vote. There's no racism in America, so we don't need a Voting Rights Act. I mean, the Supreme Court Justice, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, actually, he said that. I assume he believes it. I mean, this man is clueless.
Well, and of course they go hand in glove, because if you go and you're able to crack down on voting and you lower the franchise, if you will, that makes it easier for both legislative and judicial fiats to protect corporate and wealthy interests. So they're not unrelated. And that's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly what she's going to do. She's smart. She's incredibly bright. She's, was a star at what is pretty much of a right-wing law school. But this is not. She's not going on that court to call balls and strikes, James.
There's a guy that he's in his 80s now, but he was at Notre Dame Law School for a long, long time, and it was like Robert Blakely, something like that. He actually wrote the RICO statute, and he said,
yeah, he worked for Robert Kennedy, actually.
Yeah, and I think he's a Democrat. We should try to get him on the show and just talk about Notre Dame Law School, and I'm sure he knows Barrett. And I think he would have some real insights on what's going on there. Plus, he was a hell of a lawyer, to say the least.
Well, she's going on the court. They're going to ram it through, but there will always be a stain on this because, as I said before, they cheated to get there. There is no question that they cheated to get there. And James, I probably would have opposed the idea of whatever you call it, adding to the court. I don't like the term court.
Expanding the federal judiciary. Let's say expanding federal judiciary.
That's a good way to put it. I think I really would have had great reservations. When somebody cheats to get there, which is to get their majority, which they did. They cheated. Now, Mitch McConnell in 2016 wanted to change the size of the court too, and he did for a year. He wanted an 8-person court rather than a 9-person court, and he got it. So the idea of going to an 11-person court in a year or two from now, it seems to me, is
I think you're looking at 13.
Justified. Well, maybe 13.
I think you're looking at 13.
Yeah. And I hope one of them is Merrick Garland.
The other thing is they don't have... The Constitution does not provide for a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. It provides for a lifetime appointment to the judiciary. So you could pass a statute that limits their terms to 12 years. Now, you can't kick them off the Fed, but they can go be district judges in the D.C. court, or they can be on the D.C. Court of Appeals. Now, it's one thing to keep in mind.
One thing to keep in mind, that's still 12 pretty tough years.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that they are options because this is a problem that they created, all right, that runs contrary to the Constitution. And also, you have constitutional flexibility. And I'll tell you another option that they're going to look at really hard is you might be living in a state That's a real possibility. And Puerto Rico, Trump asked Puerto Ricans to vote for him. Of course, Puerto Ricans can't vote. But if the Democrats win the Senate, they might be voting in a presidential election come 2024. That's another real option.
Yeah. That's going to be a tough slog. Going back to Barrett, one thing that, she gave the same sort of answer that every justice nominee, Democrat or Republican, they evade any specifics. I understand that. Robert Bork showed you the peril of not doing that. But there's one thing that really I find especially onerous, and that is the question of whether she would recuse herself if an election challenge goes to the Supreme Court. Now, you and I both think this is going to be a decisive election. That won't happen. But should it happen, Trump made quite clear he was nominating her in order for her to be able to vote for him on the court. Now, she has the right of there's no automatic recusal, but if she cares about her reputation, the reputation of the court, she should say, of course I'll recuse myself in that. She didn't. And I found that really absolutely just shocking.
There's nothing these people do that shocked me. And by the way, I'm very confident about the election, but you could be wrong. I mean, Tom Etzel this morning, had a "Hey, don't go so fast" kind of column. And
yeah, but if that goes to the court and Amy Barrett cast a decisive vote, the stain that's already on her justiceship, if you will, is going to be even greater. That's just totally. I mean, that's adding to the cheating, but that's what they do, I suppose.
This one thing. I have a prediction about the polling and the outcome, and it is this: I think the polls are overcompensating for non-college whites, and I don't have any evidence to support that. But just knowing human nature, if they under accounted for them in 2016, human nature tells me they're going to over account for them this year.